Lara leads the product design team at Bumble. And many of our US audience probably will know Bumble. It's a social application that facilitates communication between people, very known in US mostly, probably coming to the Europe also very soon. So before Bumble, Lara was working at different range of companies such as TransferWise, HCBC, Mitsubishi, Sky, and Lara is focusing and passionate about building a collaborative and diverse design teams. And interesting fact that Lara is born and raised in Brazil, but currently lives in London, as I mentioned, with her family and her dog Miley. With the current focus of Lara on building a collaborative and diverse design teams at Bumble, Lara will be talking about the big problem that tech has today with its voice. Having the diverse voices with the different stories to tell in our teams can be so transformative. And Lara will share a few stories from her career on how to make diversity as your superpower. Lara, over to you.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Let me share. Should I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is very, very close to my heart, which is design for belonging. I'm Lara. I'm the product design lead at Bumble. I lead a team of a few designers, and I joined about 6 months ago. And I'm super happy to be here. I think it's really exciting that we're doing something remote at a time like this. So yeah, let's kick this off. So this is me, story time. I think it's always good to start with a story. I grew up in Brazil, like Nadia said, and I was poor as a child. I was poor my whole life. My dad was a cab driver and my mom was a teacher. This is me about like 6 years old, looking pretty pissed off. That is not
Lara?
how it was. Yeah.
Lara, so sorry to interrupt you. I think the view is still on the Acrobat view. So we are not able, yeah.
That is weird.
Yes. Now, okay. I think you press next. Yeah.
Is it okay now?
No, we still see the Acrobat view.
What about that?
Might be another monitor. No, it's still the same. Like we see the next slide though. It's again totally not a problem for us.
I don't.
If you want to navigate just within Acrobat, but we were just seeing the first slide.
Let me see if you can see it. Okay. What about now?
Yes.
Okay.
So sorry to interrupt.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. No worries.
So yeah, basically I was, poor as a child, like I said, and I grew up thinking that I didn't belong in certain places. And that was exacerbated by the fact that I was in a third world country with not a lot of opportunities. Until I was 15, I wanted to be a lawyer because I thought that's going to take my family out of poverty. And it all changed when I went to a school that was really hard to get into. It was free, but you had to do a test. And it really changed me because I had finally had professors who believed in me and thought I could go somewhere and do something with my life. And that's how I found out I wanted to be a designer. I already did design on the side as kind of a hobby. And the whole time I thought to myself, that's not a job. But it turns out it was. So I went to university and studied design. And cut to a few years after that, I decided to move from Brazil and bring my family. We're all also Portuguese as well as Brazilian. So we could move to the UK. And I was basically looking for more opportunities. So people really react in many different ways when I tell them that I brought my parents and my sister with me. My sister was 16 at the time. But, there was no life for us in Brazil. So that was an opportunity for us to have the life that we wanted to have and maybe have access to more things. And coming here really showed me how much I didn't know about belonging, about feeling included and feeling appreciated, because my experience and my dad's experience were very different. This is my dad. This is a picture from last Christmas. And, we all live in a big house together. And basically, I now pay for most of our bills. We luckily have a comfortable life now. But the thing that stayed with me from when we moved is that our experiences, mine and my dad's, were very, very different. I, speak fluent English, so I could assimilate very well. My dad doesn't speak any English. I have a high paying job, even when it was way lower than it is now. It was more junior. It was still above the average. And my dad has a low paying job. My dad delivers food for Uber Eats and Deliveroo, which is kind of like Uber Eats, but more local. And he goes through things that I don't go through. And in my head, that I realized that I belonged. People made me feel like I belonged. And that was not true for my dad. Although we were in the same family, we had the same background, and in theory, we should be treated the same. And a lot of situations happened that made me feel like that. I had to take him to the doctor every time because he doesn't speak English. I had to talk to clients on the phone for him because he couldn't speak English. And he was treated differently for the way he dresses, for the fact that he was more easily identified as an immigrant. And that opened my eyes and made me even more passionate about this topic. And obviously I can help my dad, but a lot of people are in a situation where the whole community they know is marginalized. So talking a little bit about what happened with me since I moved, that made me kind of more focused on this and also more knowledgeable. My first job, I had a lot of jobs in the UK. I was freelance for a while, but the first job where I felt connected to the mission was when I worked at TransferWise. TransferWise, if you guys don't know, is a money transfer company that basically is different from the other companies because they focus a lot on the mission to create a world without borders where I can send money to my family or to anyone else and not be extorted by fees. And they have a really mission-led product development team. And I was able to understand for the first time that you can be a designer and you can do your job and you can make money for the company and still make people's lives better. Then I went to Plum Guide, which is almost like an Airbnb, but is a little more specific because they go to each house that they put on the platform. They check everything on the house. If it's like the ad, they make sure that they kind of mediate the correspondence between the host and the guest. So there are no racially profiling. There's no any issues, and also we can help people who are not that great at technology. So naturally, we attracted a lot of the older audiences who don't really know how to navigate, for example, Airbnb, or, they usually book a hotel, but when they don't have a hotel option, they don't know what to do. And that was really great because I ended up having to design for what we usually in other products call edge cases, which are older demographics. And when I was designing for them, I realized that by designing for them, I was covering a lot of other people. And that at the end, everyone should be designing for older audiences. They should all be designing for disabled audiences because they would embrace everyone else. Everyone would know how to use the product. And then I went to Bumble. Nadia explained kind of what Bumble is, but I think if you guys know Bumble is primarily a dating company. Bumble was born when the founder, Whitney Wolf, who I love, left Tinder because she went through some stuff, some misogyny internally. And also she was not super happy with the product and what it was perpetuating. And she wanted to start her own company that would solve that problem. So she founded Bumble, and Bumble's mission is, we believe in a future where people can build relationships in a safe, equal, and healthy way. So we want to make dating better. We want to improve and fix what is wrong with dating. And that means, we want to provide a safe environment, a healthy space for our community where bullying, harassment, and hate are not tolerated. We want to flip old-fashioned gender dynamics. We want to establish equality, and we welcome and value people from across the gender spectrum and sexuality spectrum as well. We welcome healthy and encourage healthy relationships with yourself so you can show your best self and with others. And to kind of explain what I mean by belonging, I had to go through this career change to understand that when a company strives for belonging, it seems really different and you can easily understand. And that doesn't mean that we fix everything. We're far from fixing it. The dating industry is still very misogynistic, but that means that we're affecting change and that every decision in the company is made to help people belong. So we have a very diverse team, for example, and we just strive for inspiring belonging. So to explain what I mean by belonging, I did a lot of research for this, and I also have been building this talk for over a year. So this is how I started thinking about it. When we talk about the words diversity, we throw buzzwords a lot. What we usually mean is that we want multiple identities represented. So we want a diverse pool of people. When we talk about inclusion, we're talking about thoughts, ideas, and perspectives mattering of all individuals. Everyone can bring an idea to the table and it will be included, or they can bring themselves into a group and they will be included. And then there's another concept which we don't talk very much, but we sometimes get confused with the other two, which is equity. Which is like redistributing the power. So not allowing the same people with the same identities to hold all the decision making. And those three are connected, like you can see, and they coexist. But what happens when not all three exist at the same time? If you have equity and inclusion, you have an oversaturation of equal people who have the same culture, the same backgrounds, the same race, the same gender. And what that means, I put, by the way, more content here because I will make it available so you guys will be able to read more. But basically what this means is that there are no new perspectives. So organizations will lose competitive edge because they're only hearing the same ideas from the same people. And that is not good for business and also is not good for society. When you have inclusion and diversity, but you don't have equity, you have a different problem, which is you have the people, you have the ideas, but they don't own the power. So what happens is when it gets to the dominant group or to the top level management in a company, they're the ones making the decision. And if the inclusion and diversity are not there, if they're all white men, for example, they will make the same decisions over and over, even though they will have the ideas from other people and they will have diverse group of people in their teams because they still, they will defer to what they know, which is the dominant social ideology. And then if you have equity and diversity, but you don't have inclusion, you have cultural assimilation and disengagement. Because if you have a lot of diverse groups of people in your team or in your, community or in your group of friends, and you have a shift of power, but you never include their ideas, you don't listen to them. You say you have the power. You have a seat at the table, but then, when they speak, we don't listen, or we have to wait until someone who is part of the dominant group gives the same idea for it to be heard. That means that we're erasing their experiences and we are dismissing them as people. So they will first try to assimilate into the rest of the group. They would try to, behave in a certain way, have certain types of ideas that would be more accepted. And then after that, if it still doesn't work or if they feel disenfranchised, they would disengage. And in a company, it means you're going to lose those people. And in society, it just means that they will feel completely excluded. So what is belonging? Belonging is when you have all three. And it's something really, really hard to achieve. Belonging means, you're engaging the full potential of the individual. It's where innovation thrives and view beliefs and values are integrated. So Chris Burnett says it in a very good way. Belonging is the outcome of holding space where everyone truly feels empowered to speak up, make change, and shift the culture. And it is the responsibility of the people in power to create those conditions. You can punch from the bottom, but it's really hard to affect change if it's just you. So that's important to understand as well. And John A. Powell, he's a professor of ethnic studies and African American studies at the University of California. He defines it as, in a legitimate democracy, belonging means that your well-being is considered and your ability to help design and give meaning to its structures and institutions is realized. What that means ultimately is that you have safety, and that means physical, psychological, mental safety to bring your best self and to be authentic and give ideas and participate in society. You have the respect of others, and you also have self-respect for who you are. You trust the system trusts you, you trust your community people, you trust the people in your life, and you trust yourself with your beliefs. You have voice, you can have ideas, you can bring things to the table, you're heard, and you have agency, which is the most important thing, because you can have all four and still not be able to see any of your ideas realized or change society in any way. So that's what belonging means. You have to have all five of these. Why does belonging matter to designers? That's the biggest question. Belonging is such a big thing. It affects all of society, is much bigger. It's about politics, it's about economics, but what does it matter to designers? And here I bring some examples. These, you probably know some of these. You have the Facebook soap dispenser that didn't identify hands from Black people. You also have Flickr kind of alter tagging people as apes. You had the same on Facebook with gorillas. And you have checks where people say, this photo you're smiling, and it's actually just your lips who are bigger. You have Oprah being misidentified as male. You have transgender people being misidentified as male or female. And all of those is very important to say, is not on this company. I'm not saying, oh, this company, is wrong or it was intentional. It was absolutely, I believe with all my heart that none of these were intentional. And you have to keep that in mind from what I'm going to say next. But some more examples. If you Google search 3 Black teenagers, you see mugshots. If you Google 3 white teenagers, you see just very techy stock photos. And then there are a lot of other examples. You'll be able to see if you kind of go into the deck after. But, Urban Dictionary has a problem where people go into words that have certain meanings and they just create horrible meanings based on prejudice. Like they call Serena Williams, a ape, and they call girls the creation of Satan. Is horrible. And then you have ads on Twitter and on YouTube that, for example, target transgender activists or LGBT, and the ads are all about conversion therapy and anti-LGBT activism. Then you also have, for example, Airbnb, who by mistake, by having people's photos and them having to have their real names, people were being racially profiled, and hosts were saying no to people who appeared Black or the name sounded Black. You have racist filters on Snapchat. And again, none of these were intentional. I believe that no designers in this team thought, I want to make Black people feel unsafe, And then you have older examples that you see all the time about real life innovation that left out a lot of people. So office temperature was calculated, the ideal temperature based on men's metabolism. So you always see women kind of wearing cardigans because they feel too cold. Safety equipment is all based on male anatomy. So women sometimes don't fit, sometimes they feel uncomfortable, sometimes it doesn't protect them. Obviously, public restrooms leave out transgender and non-binary people. Smartphone sizes are made for men. They're too big for women and people with small hands. Voice recognition most of the time doesn't recognize really high-pitched voice. So women and some men who have higher voices. AI like Siri, if you tell Siri I was raped, Siri would say I don't know what that means until very recently, which people should be able to Google search it and find help. And car crash is a classic example, or where people all the dummies were male until very recently, and even now only 5% are female or female looking. And that means that women are way more likely to die in a car crash because all the equipment is not made for them. And what I want to say is, like I said, none of these were intentional. And this rings very similar to when people say, I'm sorry if I offended you, that was not my intention. This is important because intention harm and unintentional harm are different. But the main thing that I wanted to understand is that intention doesn't erase impact. Tatiana Mack is a designer, developer, activist. You guys probably know her. She's great. It's just great, to see how she talks about it. I would suggest you guys go in and look at her videos. Basically, if we talk about inclusion, which is what a lot of people talk about when talking about design, is inclusive design, accessible design. We're talking about exclusion as the opposite, which is when you single out a person and you leave them out of the conversation. Today, I'm kind of bringing up a notch and talking about belonging. And to me, the opposite of belonging is hostility. And the reason for that is when you feel like you don't belong somewhere is a feeling, that kind of like the horrible feeling, dread that you feel. And the whole environment seems hostile to you. You just feel like something's wrong, something is off, you might be in danger. So it's much bigger than being excluded, because being excluded might mean that sometimes people will be excluded from things. A period, product is going to be for women and people with vaginas, and not everyone is going to have them. But that doesn't matter. What matters is when you want to belong and you don't belong, the system is hostile to you. And why that's important. Because beyond the moral values, of course, that are kind of a main driver, belonging is also the gateway to innovation. If you have diverse perspectives, ideas, risk-taking, creativity, voices are saying different things, they're usually the superpowers that every company is trying to achieve. So how do we design for belonging? That's the big question. Well, we have to understand that belonging has 4 levels, at least that, I see my work and that I try to apply my work at Bumble. The first one is the self, which is all about me, it's about understanding my biases, is understanding how I'm made to feel like I don't belong and how I make others feel like they don't belong. And then you have the team, the product, and the system or society, however you want to call it. And those are about others. Those depend on other people to be realized. So trying to change everything by yourself is never going to happen because you can only affect one level. Obviously, we have to, but we also need to talk about the others for this to be fully realized. When we talk about self, there are 3 fears that every designer feels that might make them go into a path of impacting people in a negative way and making them feel like they don't belong. The first one is avoidance. We feel like if we don't talk about the elephant in the room, it doesn't exist. So sometimes we just don't recognize the problem. And the remedy for that is just recognition. It's just looking at the problem in its face. Then we have generalization, which is our assumptions and prejudgments over any subject. So we think we're solving it because we know what, LGBTQ people feel about a certain subject, but we probably don't. This is just an assumption. And then scarcity, because we feel like we never have enough time to research, to do our job, to talk to everyone. So we feel like, it's better if I don't try to do this because I'm not going to do this right. And I want to understand that what you have to ask yourself as a person and as a designer is, what point of view have I not yet considered? Map out everyone that is left out of your experience. Give pointers to yourself about your gaps. But can you, by yourself, see all your gaps? Can you fix the experience for everyone with just looking at yourself and what you know or don't know? No, because you rely on empathy. And empathy is a word that we talk about a lot in inclusive design. Everyone is like, start with empathy, be empathic. And to me, that word is a big buzzword that doesn't work, because obviously we have to have empathy as human beings. But empathy is different from experience. And until we realize that, we're not going to be able to really understand that we're leaving big gaps in how we think. So is empathy enough? No. So you have to go beyond the me level and talk about other levels. So as a leader, as a member, of a team, as a person, what can we do within our teams? First of all, is knowing that empathy has limits. So we need to build a diverse team. I'm not going to go into the hiring aspect because this is what everyone talks about when we talk about diversity and inclusion. But we need different people with different perspectives. That should be a given. But then once you have them, you should not expect them to conform to your ways of working. And you should give them a voice. You should ask for their input, because those people sometimes, they're just so saturated not being heard that they just don't talk anymore. And they don't bring their unique ideas to the table. They just conform to what is the norm. And they never talk about the difficult topics. So ask them, what is wrong with this? How can we improve this? Do you think anyone will feel marginalized with this product and this feature? And let them share their stories, because stories are very powerful. And then delegate power to those affected. If you are discussing how to do a gender selection, talk to someone who is not gender conforming, and that's a very small example, but it definitely works if you have them in your team. If you don't, talk to your users, bring them all to the table and discuss it. But don't try to do everything yourself, because like I said, you have your own gaps. And build with intention, own the impact. Don't say, oh, it was not my intention, therefore I have no responsibility. Own the negative impact and define what success and failure look like. So when you're thinking, okay, this product is going to do this for these people, but what can it not do? What is the dangers that we run into? And you'll be able to define what your failure looks like, and you'll be able to avoid it. Put it on paper. And when you fail, make a plan to fix it. Don't apologize. Well, apologize, but don't make excuses. And don't leave it and say, okay, let's just scrape this project, or let's just leave it because this is how the world is. Fix it. And ask yourself and your team those questions. Do you celebrate differences? Do you feel safe to make mistakes? Do you care about each other? If you say yes to all of these, great. But your whole team and your whole organization should be able to say the same thing. If one person is saying, I don't feel safe, you need to address it. You need to be, why are you not feeling safe? What can we do? And if you get your team to say yes to those 3 questions, that means they have a psychological safety to bring the best of themselves to work every day. And in the product, a lot is spoken about this. So there are a lot of ideas out there, but in my opinion, there are 2 things that we have to do. The first one is interrupt habits. And that's, our habits, user habits, society habits, designed to change behavior, not perpetuate them. If you know something is going to perpetuate a specific behavior, try to avoid it or try to change it, because that's what you can do as a designer. Keep in mind that misuse is not an edge case. People misusing your product should be something at the front of your mind, not the back of your mind. And create constraints. Design for the most vulnerable and extend to everyone else, because then you will succeed. The more inclusive your design is, the better it will be for everyone else, if I'm being very honest. I've never seen an example where that is not true. And then invite the users to the process, invite them for user research, talk to them, bring them into the conversation in many ways, do a public forum, just make sure that they're involved so you're listening to all those different perspectives. And you have to understand that we talk a lot about user needs, business needs. There are 3 needs that you need to consider. Investor needs are to make money, and that's not a dirty word. That is what it is. It's a business. You have to understand and you have to comply happily, unless you want to work for nonprofits. That's what it is. Then business needs is everyone in the company wants long-term success. That takes shape in the different metrics, different ways of thinking about it, but it's always long-term success. And then user needs, we usually say it needs to be easy to use. It needs to be delightful. Try to frame user needs around belonging, because bad design makes users blame themselves. So if you need to think about, a product as something that to the user is seen as a machine, you don't blame the machine. Machines don't have feelings. Machines don't have bad intentions. So when something goes wrong with design, the users will blame themselves. They will say, I'm not good enough to use this. I'm not the right audience. I don't know how to use this. I need to change myself. And you don't want that. That's the worst thing that can happen. Also, because it's not true. Design is made by people. So people will bring their own failures to the design that they're creating. And therefore, it's not the user's fault. I'll leave this for you guys to read after, but basically what it says is that, imagine if you have one kind of swing in a park and you expect everyone to be able to use it. And then only a few people come because they're the only ones who are welcome, because they're only ones who can use this. You need to stop thinking about the swing and think about the experience of swinging. There are a million ways you can change it so other people can use it. You can do a different type of swing. You can adjust the shape and the size of the seat. You can keep a person stationary and swing the environment around them. This is all swinging. It will all be fun, but that ultimately means that participation doesn't require a particular solution. But the solution can definitely limit participation. And there's a good quote about this, which is inclusive design doesn't mean you're designing one thing for all people. You're designing a diversity of ways to participate so that everyone has a sense of belonging. There's no one fits all solution. And that's what we run into usually. We try to get our product, do a feature that serves everyone. Try to think, how do I serve these people better? And do a solution for them. And lastly, towards the system or society. That's a really hard one, because as a designer, it's limited how much we can affect change in a systematic level, right? It's such a big question. But there are 2 things I want you guys to keep in mind. The first one is that humanity was made to amplify the best of technology, and technology to amplify the best of humanity. If we're not using technology to show our best selves, technology is not a good thing, right? And the second thing is that people should be able to trust that the system is not only made for them, but that it will listen to them and adapt. So it's a work in progress, it's a long game. Inclusion, belonging is a long game, but what they need to feel like is that they're heard. So how do you do that? There are 5 things that I wanted to keep in mind as a designer that you can do in your job that will affect a lot more people than just your ideal user. The first one is to be inviting. Use technology to intentionally give access to people to parts of the system that they couldn't access before. This is an opportunity. You can make money out of this, you can improve your business out of this because you're doing something no one has done before. Be welcoming, embrace them, and honor their emotions and identities, allowing them to bring their full selves and not leave parts of it at the door. I don't want to have to hide part of who I am to be involved, to be accepted in this product or in this environment. Be knowing and accepting. Make others feel seen for who they are and known for the best parts of themselves. Use technology to uplift them, not bring them down. participating and contributing, authentically engage them in ways that let them know their voices matter. Basically, they just want to be heard. And they should also know that what they're doing is making the system better for everyone. And the last one is growing. Let people grow, let them help the system grow, society grow. Use technology to act on their contributions and make sure you're adapting to their voices. Let them know that they're heard and that they're affecting change. Basically, it's saying, we hear you, we want your contribution, we value it, and we're going to act on it and put that into the product that we're designing. Because if we don't, then people feel like all the kind of yelling and talking that they're being doing for years is just not valid and is not needed and is not wanted. So I know, I spoke about a lot of things. I think on a granular level, there's a lot more you can do in your team and in your organization. You can act on those 5 principles by doing workshops and having new rituals where these things, kind of happen naturally, or you bring them out through facilitation. This is also the role of a designer. But what I want you to understand is that there are 3 things that you need to keep in mind at all levels, from the self to the system. And this is listen to others, resist our biases, and affect change. We talk a lot about the first 2, and I wanted to frame, and hopefully I did, my talk around the last one. Listening to others is very valuable. That's why we have user research and we have diverse teams. Resisting our biases is even more important because, we bring our own selves to the conversation, and then we fail because we are very self-centered naturally as humans. But then if you don't affect change, if you don't work for action, if you're just saying in the world of ideas, I would like everyone to feel included, but you're not affecting that in your product, in your team, in your personal relationships as a designer, it doesn't matter. Nothing will change and you would just get frustrated. And imagine how people who are vulnerable and minorities feel if you feel frustrated. And that's the message that I wanted to contribute today. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lara. Yeah, I, kind of like short of words. A lot of us kind of know about different parts of this conversation, but it's another thing to really put it out and call things as they are. So thank you so much for doing that. I've definitely experienced a lot of those things that you talked about today. And I think Nadia as well, both of us coming from, being immigrants in a different country that we weren't brought up in. Yeah, but thank you so much, Lara. Thank you. There's a lot of love being shared for you on the chat, on Twitter. It was really, thank you so much for bringing up such an important conversation.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Bye.